For your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 360 of This Old Marketing for Friday, January 27th, 2023. And with me, as always, my pal, my colleague, and a guy who's slightly more valuable than a dozen eggs, Mr. Joe Polizzi.
Did you see, my wife showed me some meme going around and saying that the best present you could get if you're getting married, and it was a wedding ring with a egg on it.
Dozen eggs?
With an egg, with what it was a fried egg instead of a diamond. It's like the most valuable thing you could get.
It's a little nutty out there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and you know what's weird about it is there doesn't seem to be, like, if you go to some stores, they're relatively, I mean, they're expensive or more expensive than they have been, but not insanely so. But then you go to some other stores and it's like $9 or something.
That's right.
For a dozen eggs.
It's all over the board. I wonder if the chickens, like, they've got to be saying, I deserve more money for what they do because, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're charging more for the egg itself, you would imagine that the chicken is more valuable.
Well, which really comes first, though? That's the question.
Ooh.
Do you price the chicken or do you price the egg? That's the real. Now, people are going to think we designed that. I just thought that up on the spot.
You are so quick.
I'm pretty proud of myself. I'm
You're
pretty proud of myself,
especially for your age. I mean, you really know your stuff.
That is true.
Very, very
that
quick.
is true.
I thought you were going to do a 360 degree, like, because it's the 360th episode. You're going to get the 360 degrees of content marketing. The full Monty of content marketing.
No, that I did not go there. I didn't even think about going there, to be honest. The 360.
I didn't either.
Although
the 360 is a significant number.
That's good.
It means that we've spent 360 hours plus your time and my time. So let's add another 2 hours to that. It's a lot of wasted time.
It really is.
I don't know if we're providing enough value for that amount of time that's gone down the drain.
Oh, I think we've provided 360 hours of because it's been way more than 360 hours of our time.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. It's 360 hours of recording time in general.
Yeah. Well, the time to worry about is not our time. The time to worry about is...
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, so people are listening.
If I'm here and you're here, Mr. Hand, isn't it our time? Yeah.
I don't know. See, people are listening to this right now saying, you know, you're right. I'm wasting my life listening to these two shenanigan makers.
Yeah, you almost said something different.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I was trying to keep this a family show because some people listen to it on their way to take the kids to school and then they go to work. So
that's right.
Whenever you bust out with, you know, I usually am pretty clean. Sometimes you'll throw an S-bomb, not an F-bomb.
Yeah.
We don't have, that's not that kind of show. We're PG-13.
Well, right. We always want to try and not get the tag, right? Because I think they automatically apply it. We don't want the tag from Apple saying that we're not safe for work or whatever.
It's interesting.
Which is why I don't cuss. I mean, I would cuss like a sailor on this show if it were up to me.
Totally off the subject. I was answering some tweets the other day, and I saw that Podcast Movement had said, "Hey, throw out your tagline." And it's funny. I did it right away. You know, it's your story. Tell it. Yeah. It's your story.
Yeah.
Tell it well. And I'm like, that's a really good tagline. A lot of people like that. That we have I mean, I don't know if that's our tagline. But that's what you end with. So that wouldn't be our tagline necessarily, but it should be.
Well, I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's as good as any for our podcast. We've had it since the very beginning.
The very first episode, that was how long did it take you to come up with that? Did you just say, I'm going to throw that in?
I had been doing it for a couple of, not very long, but I had done it on a couple of videos or something, and I thought it was a nice catchphrase, right? I thought it was a nice catchphrase for me to sort of end blog posts with, or end my weekly column with, which I still do, by the way.
You do,
still end
that's
my
right.
Weekly column, yeah. And then it was a nice way to end it really, the podcast was what formalized it, because I was not using it consistently until we started doing the podcast. Then it was just a nice way to sort of, it's the old legacy. It's my homage to Edward R. Murrow, right? Where he would end. I can't remember now that we're sitting here recording live. I can't remember the actual saying that he used to have at the end of every show, but he had one, and then every newscaster has sort of had their sign off, right? And so that was what I wanted it to be.
That's really good. Bertie Borges, friend of the show, has a great midlife fulfilled podcast now that he's been doing.
I've been on it.
That's right.
Yeah,
I have too. Because we're both old.
That's right.
And that's how
we
you
both
get
have
on that
midlife
show.
crises.
No offense, Bernie, but obviously you have to have a before and an after to be on that show, and of course you and I both do. But he was telling me with my Content Inc. podcast, he's saying, Joe, you can't just say good luck or whatever, end it. You have to end it with a thing like we do for This Old Marketing. So I think I was playing around with something like, go out and build your content business, but not on rented land or something like that. That's what I was. But then sometimes it didn't fit. So I've been back and forth on it, but I've been trying to end with something. Just haven't found it yet. It's tough. You guys see, you got it the first time. That never happens. First episode, you got it.
Yeah.
I'm still searching for mine after, I think, 370 episodes of that.
Well, there you have it.
Jeez.
There you have it. I was like,
yeah. Well, it's what are we doing? I'm reevaluating my entire content production life right now.
You should reevaluate your entire life right about now. This is the time to do that, to reevaluate your life.
It's always the time.
And speaking of reevaluating your life, you've just announced an amazing lineup for the new CEX event.
Oh, thank you.
That's worth reevaluating your life to go see this event.
Thank you. Yes, this week we unveiled our agenda, which. And you know this, I've been in the events industry for 15 years. You and I work closely together on Content Marketing World. I feel so good about this agenda. I feel like we hit a home run with this one. I mean, obviously with you're speaking on how to find your content differentiation area, which is a great topic. And we have the best of the best. Jesse Cole, owner of the Savannah Bananas, going to talk about his fans first thing. And we have 40 of the OGs of content creation that are coming. And by the way, just so everyone knows, this is a price break week. So as you're listening to this on Friday, if you're one of the lucky ones that listen to it first thing, we have a price break at the end of today. So if you would like to get it, go to Creator Economy Expo, which is May 1st through 3rd in Cleveland, and see the best of content creation on the planet. Use code TOM. That's for This Old Marketing, by the way. Capital T, capital O, capital M. Save an extra $100. I want to see you there. You can meet me, meet Robert. We can get together. We probably will have to do some kind of. We'll probably be doing some show. We'll have to, I think, or something.
Of course, we'll have to do something.
Maybe we'll integrate it. I don't know what we're going to do, but anyways, if you listen to this podcast, come out and meet us in Cleveland for Creator Economy Expo. If you are any part of the content marketing or content creation process, you will get immense value out of this show. So thank you for pitching that up to me.
Of course, great There's some great speak. I mean, other than me, of course, there are some really good speakers that are coming.
I don't know where to start. I mean, you sort of have the OGs from Content Marketing World, like you've got your Jay Baer, your Ann Hanley, your Andy Crestodina, your Brian Fanzo, and then you've got the up and coming amazing content creators like your Jay Klaus and your Justin Moore, and we've got Alexis Grant, who just launched a media company. They got acquired, a great brand. Jay Akunzo is going to be there. Daphne Gomez. Yeah. I mean, oh my God, so good. And by the way,
that's good stuff.
Just so people know, that's 6 months in the making. That's like, I look at that and I'm like, that's 6 months of my life that I've spent getting people.
Well, now you're reevaluating your life, and this is a reminder of how much wonderful value you've added to the world.
Yes. But it honestly only works if people come.
Dreams really do come true.
But people have to come. So people really listening to this have to be there.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So you can put the agenda together, but still, you haven't done anything unless there's people to consume the content.
Yes.
That's the other part of this.
That's a good point.
Same for us.
You need an audience, right?
Same for this
you
podcast.
need an audience. It's the what's that old comedian saying, right? The only difference between a speaker and an insane person is an audience.
Oh my goodness, that's who said that quote? That's a great quote.
I don't remember. Yeah.
And that I feel like I'm losing my mind half the time. Well, you know, we have these conversations. Right. You're my therapist. Indeed. In a lot of ways.
In many cases, yes. Not this weekend.
Well, yeah. Before we get going here with the news, I'm so sorry about your Cowboys.
Wah. Yeah, that was. And boy, the memes are aplenty. Everything from the stupid last play that was like, what the hell are they doing, to Dak's performance, to just, it's just all the memes. Like, I've got people going, wow, there's a lot of memes going around. I'm like, you know what? They deserve it. They deserve it the way they played. It's just not good.
It's unfortunate with when you have a last game like that, and then people call into question things that probably weren't questioned before. Like, now are people saying that Dak isn't the person to be at quarterback now?
Yeah, but anybody with any realism, the amount of money that's still left on his contract, he's not going anywhere, right? There's just no way.
No, I agree, but can he take the Cowboys all the way? I guess is the question.
I think if you polled the fans right now, you'd probably get 1 or 2% who would say yes, right?
Sure.
Right, today. In any normal season after he plays an amazing, because that's the thing. He's never mediocre, right? He's either amazing
or terrible
and plays lights out, or awful, right? And so it's just and he's so inconsistent, right? He'll play amazing football for 2, 3, 4 games, and then have a stinker, and then have 3 stinkers in a row, or go one game and there's no pattern to it. It's just which Dak is going to show up, and it's infuriating, because most of the time, whenever the big lights are on, whenever there's big things going on, he tends to throw in. That's when the stinkers usually come out.
The bright lights.
Yes.
And you know what?
Yes.
Why do they have to show Jerry Jones after every big play on television? Is that necessary? I don't think it is.
No, but it's what you get when you're the owner and the GM. And
they used to do that with George Steinbrenner all the time with the Yankees.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like Dave Winfield hit a home run. Let's pan to Steinbrenner. What's he doing?
Sure.
I'm like, come on. Let's watch the people play. That's all we want.
That's right.
Anyways, do we have a show?
We have a show. We do have a show. We have a lovely show. We have a wonderful show to talk about. Some interesting things came up this week for us to chat about. The first is something else, a meme going around the internet that we can talk about, is that OpenAI apparently used an outsourced firm in Kenya and Kenyan workers on less than $2 per hour, and we'll talk about what that really means and what the responsibilities of the media are in that situation and all of those different kinds of things. We'll talk about Spotify and the question, have we reached peak podcast? Ooh. Spotify joining the number of other tech companies that are out there having layoffs, and announced a 6% layoffs. But we'll see what that actually has implications to with regard to where we are in podcasting. Then we'll talk about probably the biggest breaking news that no one is really talking about, which is the Justice Department has decided to sue Google for corrupting the ad market for an antitrust lawsuit, which is finally the Justice Department showing a little teeth on this kind of stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then if we've got time, we'll talk a little bit about how newsrooms, you can sense a theme here, are reckoning with artificial intelligence following the saga that's going on at CNET, which was recently admitting and looking at how much actual content they were using AI to create, should humans be involved. Then we'll get into our rants and raves, and I'll have some commentary on what's really going on with the media and tech layoffs, and maybe just a little bit of a perspective there. And again, sort of taking the media and the narrative that's going around in meme culture to task a little bit. And you are going to talk a little bit about your LinkedIn experiment and how it's been going over the last 30, 40, 50, 60 days.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Help us with some insight.
Before we get to our first story, which is relevant, I just wanted to ask you, are you using ChatGPT at all? Have you been using it?
I have used it, and I have been using it. I have not been using it for any business or thought leadership or whatever content I create. I have not used it to. I've used it a couple of times to write a webinar abstract. I was asked for a webinar abstract that I'm doing, and I had it. I wrote a little thing, and then I had it write it better and just give me some alternative versions, and it came up with some interesting things. But so I've been using it more for experimentation, like when I see things and I'm reading about things and I go, oh, let me log in. I'm paying for it. I'll tell you that. I'm actually paying for access to both it and DALL-E 2. So
you are number one customer. You're doing all the things.
I'm doing all the I have access to all the things. I don't know that I'm doing that much of the things, but I do have access to them. Yeah.
Got it. I'll tell you what, I've been using it for a title suggester, and I think it's fantastic for that purpose.
It's good. Yeah, titles and subtitles, especially subtitles, it's really good at, I find. Because typically when you want a subtitle, you want something much more explanatory. Just simple and straightforward, and it's really good at that. For writing simple, straightforward, how to, like, what is it text, it's fantastic.
Some of this stuff is so funny. I saw one thing going around that they asked, like, talk about this topic and make a song like what Drake would sing. And then you take that and you throw it into this thing called Drake.it or something, and it will sing it, like Drake will sing it. And it's Drake's voice. You can have ChatGPT create a song in the style of Drake, and then you can have Drake.it actually sing it as Drake. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going off the deep end now.
Well, there's a whole. We're not talking about it on the show today, but I just literally saw a link that came through of a guy who he took had DALL-E 2 put in and created an image of kind of a video game looking, sort of a Unreal Engine video game looking person, like a hero. Mm-hmm. Then had ChatGPT create a very short story in the first person about a space guy who gets lost and is trying to find his way home, and then put that into one of those voice actor things with the image that'll move the mouth and stuff. Move the mouth and the eyes, sure. and basically created a short, a 5-minute scene of this guy telling his story, this astronaut telling his story. It's like a movie. It's not that good, but it's interesting. It's really interesting.
It's going to be crazy in the next couple of years. I'm amazed, and I know we'll get into the article now, but I'm amazed at how quickly it became everything AI. And we've been talking about it on the show, like bits and pieces, for a long time, but all of a sudden, this comes out in November, and all the conversations in marketing have changed to, what are we doing in AI?
Yeah. So that's right.
Here we are.
It's amazing. Well, speaking of that, let's get to our first story here, which is a Time exclusive, although it seems like every media company on the planet has decided to rewrite the article for their own specific angle on it. And it says the headline is OpenAI used Kenyan workers on less than $2 per hour to make ChatGPT less toxic. The article opens up with, ironically and kind of weirdly, I think, an image generation out of DALL-E 2, which I just found weird.
That is kind of weird, but I get why they did it.
It's gonna come quickly that I don't love this article at all, but I'll get to that. I'll get to that point. The opening of the article starts up by saying ChatGPT was hailed as one of 2022's most impressive technological innovations upon its release last November. The powerful artificial intelligence chatbot can generate text on almost any topic or theme, from a Shakespearean sonnet reimagined in the style of Megan the Stallion.
Yeah, we'll get that right.
Yeah,
I love Megan
the
Stallion.
How about Drake, I guess? Insert that. ChatGPT's creator, OpenAI, is now reportedly in talks with investors to raise funds at $29 billion of evaluation, including a potential $10 billion investment by Microsoft. But, says the article, the success story is not one of Silicon Valley genius alone. In its quest to make ChatGPT less toxic, OpenAI used outsourced Kenyan laborers, earning less than $2 per hour, a time investigation has found. The work was vital for OpenAI. ChatGPT's predecessor, GPT-3, had already shown an impressive ability to string sentences together, but it was a difficult sell as the app was also prone to blurting out violent, sexist, and racist remarks. This is because the AI had been trained on hundreds of billions of words scraped from the internet, a vast repository of human language. That huge data training set was the reason for ChatGPT's 3's impressive linguistic capabilities, but was also perhaps its biggest curse, since parts of the internet are replete with toxicity and bias. Basically, the article then goes on for some amount of time to talk through its investigative report, where they got snippets of text, they got billing forms, they got pay slips, etc. And they've discovered that SamaSource, which is an outsourcing partner in Uganda and Kenya and India, but the Kenyan, I guess, office was the one that had the assignment from OpenAI to label data that was considered violent or pornographic or toxic in some way. And as the article reports, we're paid only between $1.32 and $2 per hour based on your seniority and performance. And that basically a few months into the project, there were some real complaints from the employees basically saying it's scarring me, talking about and looking at this content is not good. They offered counseling, but at some point, Sama, the outsourced partner, said, nah, no more. We're going to actually close this down and basically quit the contract before it had actually completed. And the article just says all of that in a very long.
They use
long
words, and
article.
those words go on and on.
Yeah, exactly. It goes on and on. I mean, so anyway,
Sure.
What has happened since, of course, is that this has all gone quite viral. And people looking at that and very surface level saying, oh my God, they're exploiting Kenyan workers and how dare they, and they have to deal with this toxic, horrible content, and this is exploitation and all those kinds of things. So anyway, before I give my take, which is a bit of a spoiler alert, you can start to already hear it. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I definitely would love to hear. I love a Robert rant, but there's a couple of issues here. First of all, you have the payment. There's one issue, the payment to employees, which seemed to be about $1.50 or $1.75. Now, okay, I'm going to throw this out as a very insensitive person that knows nothing about what's going on in the world. What does that mean in those dollars? Like, how much?
I actually looked it up. I actually looked it up.
How much does $2 go for in Kenya?
Yeah. Yeah, it's about the equivalent was $280. They were salaried, by the way. So they just time decided to do division. By the way, they're not hourly workers; they are salaried workers.
Oh.
So therefore, they get benefits and health care and all that stuff. And so it's $200. The equivalent is about between $250 and $280 per month, or the equivalent of 20. I think it's 21,000, 22,000 Kenyan shillings, which is about the same salary there that a government worker gets, or a nurse gets, or a teacher gets, or someone in and around that level of position.
So, I guess to ask you the question are they significantly underpaying? They're getting 12.
They're overpaid. They're actually it's over.
Yeah, OpenAI was paying them $12.50 for the work, and then they took their profit, all the administrative stuff, and they ended up paying the employees $2 of that to do
correct.
This work. Okay,
that is correct.
So there's that. I think
that's correct.
What was the most interesting and frightening about this article is what had to be done to make to make ChatGPT, OpenAI, a usable tool with the thousands of horrific, brutal, violent documents that human beings had to go through to tag properly so that ChatGPT ends up being a usable thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an awful. It's a horrible job. I mean, I don't think anybody's arguing that this is all unicorns and
and by the way, they talk in here.
Job.
There's people that are having like some major mental issues because for months they're going through this disturbing content. So anyways.
And there's some debate about whether they were offered counseling or whether they had to go proactively and ask for the counseling. And, there is a bit of he said, she said here in terms of what they actually did for the employees. What's not disputed, apparently, is the fact that at some point, Sama, the firm that employed all these folks, went, nope, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to do this any longer, and they quit the contract. They stopped the contract.
Which is at the very end of the article. Yeah, they say
that's right.
It's Sama said no, right? So that's
right.
how that.
That's right. But interestingly, there are some outlets that are reporting on this, and the angle they've taken is that basically Sama somehow shafted these employees by quitting the contract and fired them all. Right? That there's a layoff story here as well, which is also very odd to me. It's basically there's not a lot of the articles that surround this, because this one, other than I take to task a little bit the way that things are presented, which seems that there's definitely a point of view here from the perspective of time, and some of the things that how they chose to present things. For example, the $2 per an hour instead of $280 a month. There's definitely there was some clickbaiting going on here, but more importantly is I think it's lost to your point, it's really lost the nuanced discussion which we should be having, right? Which is, I see an argument that says, should these workers be doing this type of work, or should this work quite honestly be done at all? It's a really interesting that this work has been going on for years in social media.
Sure.
There are people who work at Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these things who have to sort through all these things and delete these things as fast as they possibly can, and they're looking at awful images and videos and horrific text and all kinds of things. The nuanced conversation here is, one, who should be doing this work and how much should they be being paid? Is the equivalent of just over minimum wage right? In the U.S. or anywhere else in the world, or is it that we should be doing this at a very high level? In other words, people who can handle this better, maybe emotionally, or who qualify for handling this more emotionally, should be paid more. I think that's an honest conversation that should be had. And so, and then the third is who's the right person to do this? Like, what's the right firm? Do you outsource this to a staffing firm where there's a number of people in a cube farm that are tracking this thing, acting like almost a big pool of typing, typing pool kind of thing? Or is it the kind of thing where you want to really assign it to careful, considered professionals, and it just takes so long, right? So anyway, what I hate about this whole thing is the meme that goes around that distracts from the actual conversation. That's what's so annoying.
Yeah, I didn't really know where the article was going, because it's clear that human beings are needed for this type of work if we are going to use a system like a Chat GPT.
Right.
You're right. Then the question is, how much do you pay them?
Or not, right? Yeah.
And what's humane and what's not for them to deal with. Somebody has to. If we decide that this product is necessary for the future of humanity, and they want to actually, Microsoft and OpenAI want to go forward with this thing, somebody's got to do it.
That's right. Well, and this is the increasingly interesting part of the AI discussion, right? Because the AI discussion tends to be around how AI is going to replace people in doing certain tasks or certain jobs or certain things, right? What's not as well covered are all of the people who will be having to do things to make AI do the thing it's going to do. And today we're talking about horrible, toxic things on the internet. Tomorrow, the training model will be our corporate content, or the training model will be and there is a huge manual labor effort that's going to have to go in to make training models better, both automated and manual, to be honest, but manual for sure. So the real question is going to be, over time, who is going to do that work, right? Is that the purview of this kind of situation where you outsource it to the lowest possible cost based on your currency valuation? And that's, I mean, we've been doing that for years and years and years, from everything from making sneakers to making iPhones,
content farms,
content farms to anything, right? The iPhone that you hold in your hand, the sneakers that you wear, and the jacket and jeans that you have on your body, the car that you drive. That we've been doing that forever, and this is no different, certainly, than any of that. The manufacture, basically, of AI-oriented tools will have a human labor-oriented component, and that's a worthy conversation of having, for sure.
And we will have it for, I guess what we're talking about is nothing. This is nothing new. What?
Right.
So
exactly. It's nothing new, but because it's sexy, right? It was an easy mark for
that's true.
A writer to go, hey, right now the hottest thing in the world, I picture Stefan, right, going, the hottest thing in the world right now is ChatGPT. Inside, you'll find Kenyan laborers. It's like,
Stefan.
This is not Stefan. Yeah, really? Stefan, right? Yeah, right, of course.
Of course.
That's the way this article is so breathless, right? It's so breathless with you'll find Kenyan laborers being exploited for $2 an hour. And that meme goes around the world. I mean, you just do a Google search on this, and it's like Business Insider and Forbes and everybody picked up this story, and then they just picked it up without really looking into it, and didn't even do the simple math of what's the currency exchange rate right now for a Kenyan shilling versus a dollar, and what's the average wage in Kenya right now.
Yeah, that was my first question. I'm like, I don't know what this means. Like, this is different. Anyways,
there you go. Yeah. Good. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so we're going on to our next story here, and something that's really, really quite interesting, and that is meta to what we're doing right now, which is, of course, all about podcasting. So this comes to us courtesy of the Morning Brew. Spotify layoffs could spell trouble for the podcasting industry, says the Morning Brew. It opens up by saying the corporate podcasting boom may be ending, not with too long preamble before the guest, but a whimper. I bet he was really proud of that.
That's stellar.
They wrote that. Yeah. Spotify announced yesterday that it will lay off about 600 employees, or 6% of its workforce, in the latest big tech, with caps big tech recession hedge. The shakeup could signal a pivot in the company's podcast strategy. Like most of the other tech companies making cuts, Spotify cited overly ambitious pandemic growth, which I will talk about later in my rant, as the primary cause. And CEO Daniel Ek took full accountability along with the layoffs themselves. Ek announced a major departure from the audio streamer Chief Content Officer Don Ostroff, who was the driving force behind the company's $1 billion podcasting arms race to sign deals with like Gimlet, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and of course the ever-present Spotify celebrity Joe Rogan. And these podcast mega deals of the pandemic may have been premature, says the article. Podcasting just made up 7% of total listening on Spotify in Q1 of 2022. The company said despite the massive investment in tentpole shows and the exclusive show model that makes popular shows available only to subscribers, that these things haven't been proven to be wildly successful. If you zoom out, says the article, SiriusXM and Amazon Music have also hit the brakes on podcasts, reducing signing offers, increasing their share on advertising revenue. And on the whole, 2022 just wasn't the best year to talk into a microphone. What do you think about this? This was fascinating. This is a fascinating question. I meant to actually ask our good friend Tom Webster about this.
I would love to know what Tom, and then, of course, his company used to work with Edison Research, is doing in this as well. But the 7% is a significantly insignificant number.
That's right.
I mean, think about that. All the money that Spotify has paid and all the infrastructure and buying Anchor and everything they're doing around podcasting, and it's not 93% of their business.
That's right.
I mean, what it says to me is and a couple things. It takes so long for a podcast to build an audience, and you and I could talk to this at length about how long it takes. It's different for musicians. You can build an audience much quicker, I think, as a musician on a platform like Spotify than you can as just doing a podcast, because you have to invest a lot more time if you're going to generally listen to one podcast. An average podcast is 30 to 45 minutes, maybe more. A song is 3 minutes. You can get hooked much quicker. So they're investing all this, and I go back to the stat, and I forgot which stat, but I used this in my presentation at Content Marketing World last year, that 40% of podcasts have 2 or less episodes.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm under the assumption that in 21 and 22, you had everybody and their brother and sister create a podcast, and they tried, they stopped, and they didn't build an audience. Some did, but most didn't. And that's what you're going to see. It's survival of the fittest. In order for a podcast to work, you've got to do more than a year plus, and you've got to integrate it with everything else that you're doing to make it. So I don't know. Do you think that Spotify over-invested in this area? You're going to rant about this later, but what's going on?
No, what I'm gonna rant a little bit about is again the meme that's going around, and what sets me off, I guess, on this is yet again. I mean, what we need to realize is that these tech CEOs, these tech and media companies, are doing this. This is all happening now. These recessions, the layoffs are happening now, not because they overhired and suddenly realized, oh my gosh, fanning their face, I do declare we've hired too many people. They're doing that because somebody else led the way, right? And namely, Amazon was the one who's seemingly leading the way here. And saying,
and Microsoft
pull the
and
plug
Google
now. Pull the Band-Aid off now. Exactly. Pull the Band-Aid off now, where we get buried at the bottom of the news of the next company that laid off 6% or 7% or 10% of its workforce, which is a standard operating procedure, by the way, for most of these companies, and not an indicator that the world is on fire. We over-index to tech, for sure. I mean, in terms of the emotional output of the mainstream media, in terms of what's going on from an employment perspective. That doesn't make the people who got laid off feel any better. I understand that. But what we need to understand is that for Spotify, the narrative of this is, we're in painful times right now and all of this kind of stuff, I don't buy it. I think this is just a business decision for them to get right-sized with what they're doing. I think it says nothing at all about the health of podcasting, and I think it says everything about Spotify going, yeah, we got to, in 2023, here's where we are. We've acquired a bunch of companies. There's a lot of overlap in what they do, and we've got a focus on our strategy, and that means that we've got duplication, and we don't need the duplication. We don't need that extra cost, and so they're just jettisoning some.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm just thinking about, is the podcast business for a big tech company like a Spotify a mediocre business model?
Well, that I think time will tell.
We don't know,
that,
right? And I think they're right for
yeah.
investing in it. I absolutely do, because I still think that they can be the source for podcasts long term, because Apple is just deferring that to everyone else for some reason.
Yeah, I think the future of audio as a subscribed audio, which is really what we're thinking about when we talk about podcasting, is I think that's my gut tells me it's a good business. I don't have nearly the analytical chops and haven't done nearly enough research and work into it. Like, for example, our friend Tom Webster, who lives this stuff day in and day out, who could tell us much more relevantly what the future looks like. But my gut tells me that this is going to continue. That podcast expansion is going to continue. The challenge of getting private podcast as a content marketing vehicle will continue to be difficult. That it'll be very much like every other entertainment platform is a tale of the 99 and the 1, right? Where 99% of the people do contribute content to, like you said, 3 episodes, 4 episodes, and no audience, to the 1% who have big audiences, right? And the goal, as with every other, if you're an author, if you're a filmmaker, if you're a musician, is you are part of the 99% and you're trying to be part of the 1%.
Yep.
It's just that's the filter that you're trying to get through.
There's no doubt that audio is going to be huge. I mean, we've talked about on the show the advancement of the audiobook industry and how everybody's expanding into that. Yeah. This is a thing, but if you look at the trends in podcasting and audiobooks over time, there was never any huge spike up. It's been nice growth every year, a couple percent up. Yeah. I think I think the last thing I saw is almost 50% of people listen to one podcast a month, or it's like 43%. So we're getting there. And it'll continue to go up 2% a year until most everybody's going to do that on a regular basis. So, but there's winners.
The funny thing is, just one small data point for you before we move on to the next story. I literally just hit send over the weekend on my manuscript to the publisher of my new book that's coming out in September, and I purposely wrote that book. The style in which I wrote it, I purposely wrote it to be listened to, right? So if you read the book, it's going to come across as, I hope it comes across as casual and a little bit not formal at all, I guess is the more point, right? Not very book-like or business book-like. So
conversational,
I use a lot of slang. Conversational, exactly. But I did that purposely because I know they're going to do an audiobook, and that's the way I want to optimize the experience.
By the way, before we get to the next story, congratulations on getting the forward writer of the Millennium
very, very
for your book. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. I'll be very, very quick about it. Yes, it's so as most of you who have been any sort of listener for this show for a long time, I am a student of marketing and a student of the Masters of Marketing, and one of my heroes is Philip Kotler, who is, of course, the distinguished professor at Northwestern, the Kellogg School, and has written 70 books on marketing, and he is just, he's the man when it comes to marketing education, what you go to university to learn. And he agreed very graciously to write the foreword to my new book. And it's a bucket list item.
Congratulations.
It's lovely. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic. And of course, Mr. Kotler was very intelligent to make this decision. So I'm sure it's going to be a heck of a book.
Well, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. We'll see about that part. All right, let's move on to our next story here, which is the sort of big and breaking news this week, of course, and that is that the Justice Department has decided to sue Google for corrupting the ad market. The article opens up from Axios by saying the Justice Department in 8 states on Tuesday filed an antitrust lawsuit against Google's parent company Alphabet, accusing the tech giant of illegally abusing its dominance in digital advertising and violating the Sherman Antitrust Act. They finally got some teeth into their mouth. Why it matters is because the second major antitrust lawsuit filed against Google by the Justice Department in the last 3 years, and if it's successful, could force Google to sell off much of its advertising business. The DOJ and a coalition of state attorneys generally sued Google in 2020 for using anti-competitive tactics to illegally monopolize online search and search advertising, and that lawsuit is ongoing. But this one is about their display ads and the ad market for both sides of that, the sort of ad serving as well as the ad network that is available there. So I definitely have a take on this, but do you want me to just quickly?
Yeah, I want to hear your take because you said your take has to do with content creators. My take on just the monopoly that they're calling this, which I guess if you look at it on paper, it certainly looks like one. I think this is 5 years too late, and at this point, I think this is not the right thing for the Justice Department to do, because when I look at Google and I look at Google search, I think that's a stalled business model in my opinion. I think they've gotten as much as they're going to get out of that particular business model with what's going on with ChatGPT, what's going on with Amazon, what's going on at TikTok, which really is more content discovery like we're finding at Google than a social media platform. So if they look at the competitive set, they're just looking at search advertising. But if but they're looking at that textual search, so it's like, oh, what's your competitors? It's Bing and it's DuckDuckGo or whatever, right? No, that's not the competitive set. It's much broader than that, and I don't think they're looking at that. If they would have looked years ago before TikTok was around and before Amazon really got into the search industry, maybe. I don't think now. I think this is silly, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Although I'll add a bit of, because I actually went and read.
Yeah, what was it?
That's how much love I have for this audience of this show. Is I went and read the DOJ's complaint, and it's interesting because it's actually not about. So the lawsuit from 2020 is about search, right? About search ads. This is the ad network and ad serving, right? So banner ads basically on other people's websites. So publishers, for example, will very often monetize the real estate that they don't sell with Google ads, right? So your ad may appear on Forbes. I don't know that Forbes uses it, but
Sure.
Other publications will use the Google ad serving platform. Now, as the DOJ says, most people don't have more than one ad server, especially small and medium-sized businesses. They go with one or the other. So this is where it has direct relation to content creators, right? If you're a content creator and you're building something that is advertising driven, chances are the first way you're going to try and monetize this is through Google Ads. You're going to stick Google Ads on your website. This is what we're talking about, is the monopoly that Google has both on the ad buying side, where I buy that real estate, and on the serving side. And this was the acquisition of DoubleClick. So you're exactly right. 2007 calls and want their lawsuit back.
Sure.
And this is when this should have gone down, right?
Before,
that horse is way out the barn now.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is the purchase of DoubleClick and AdMob, which this
right.
is it. The ad serving company
Yes.
and the mobile ad network, and that's why they are in this position today. So
that's exactly right. So it's nice, and philosophically, I can agree that they probably shouldn't have both ends of that spectrum, but they shouldn't have had both ends of that spectrum going back almost a decade.
Yeah, I guess.
And now the question is, what do you do about it? Especially in the context, and I think you bring up a really great point, especially in the context of the search business is in trouble. And AI is a big piece of that, right? So AI being a big piece of the threat to what Google's doing in search, I think for the first time certainly since I can remember, Google actually has a viable threat out there when it comes to their business model. And I think there's that goes from everything from, to your point, verticalized search, right, where Amazon is now the number one for product search, and maps are in many ways competing with Google Maps, and you've got Kayak and others that are doing things like travel search and all kinds of verticalized search, which is drinking some of the milkshake away from Google. But in many ways, AI will be the biggest threat there unless they do something about it. So I think this is, in context with where they are now, they have a good argument that, hey, this is not a trust anymore or monopoly anymore.
Here's, I think, the big issue for marketing folks and content folks. When we think of search, we think of search engine optimization. When we think of discovery, right, we think of SEO, which is now incorrect. Content discovery, SEO is one part. That's the search engine part of discovery. We're going to have audio search, voice search is coming out. We've got social search, social discovery. You've got discovery going all over the place, and we can't just say, "Oh, how are we doing with Google today?" Which, by the way, if you haven't noticed, and I talked about this with a group on my LinkedIn page, Google is just one page now. In the United States, you just scroll on forever. There's no page 2. So great. If you were always wanting to make it on page 1 for a keyword phrase, you did. It's one page. It just might be at the very bottom of the page. So,
and the interesting thing is that when you talk about that discovery, right, things like TikTok and what Facebook is doing with their with Reels, and what Amazon is doing with suggestions, and all of these things will get they've been really dumb, right? Personalization generally, content discovery or push content as I call it, has been generally pretty dumb over the last few years, but it's getting really smart. And TikTok is the perfect example of this, right? Where it just knows what you want. And pretty soon it's going to be, it just knows. You're not even going to have to search. It's going to be, you put in what you want, and you don't even search for things, right? It's just there. And that interface is also one ripe for business models and all sorts of things. And you can see Google is concerned about it because of the way that they're making changes to Google and the way that they're making changes to the way search behaves. Yep. And, everything from the knowledge graph to scraping more and more content to stick it on the front page of Google when you make a search for something so that you don't have to go anywhere. It's in their best interest that they keep you within that walled garden. So that affects all of us as content creators, as marketers, and as communicators, because it just changes the way that we think about the content we create and how it's going to be served up to our potential audiences.
It's interesting when you look at the companies in the S&P 500 and you wonder why they turn over so much every year, and every 10 years you only have 70%, and then the next 10 years 50%. And if you look back 50 years, you only have a couple companies left. You think, oh, how can Google lose? How can Alphabet not be in business? And then you look at, I'm probably scared if I'm with the executive team. I'm fearful because of what AI is doing and what TikTok's doing right now. And I'm looking at the Google business model and I'm saying, 81% of their revenue is through advertising. It's a concern. So anyway, that's why when you come back and you look at what the Justice Department is doing, they're looking at Google's past dominance. They're not looking at what's going to happen in the future.
That's right.
To make this decision.
Right, which is exactly the same thing. So they're litigating something that should have been litigated in 2007 or 2008, and now it's 2023. It's like, no, you got to catch up and look at what you're litigating today, and really not what you're litigating today, but what you're going to be litigating in 2030 and 2035. And so that's the real question, which of course is not literally the way the Justice Department works. I understand, but it's crazy how fast the technology develops, and where the FTC and the Justice Department are looking at antitrust and they can't keep up. It clearly can't keep up. So it's difficult. I get it. It's really difficult.
How can they keep up when all these confidential documents are in everybody's house?
There we go.
Everybody has confidential documents. They just take them home. I think they just wait.
They do.
They're like handouts. Yeah. They're like handouts when you leave the White House or the House of Representatives. You just say, "Here's your confidential document.
Here's your file folder. Yeah, here's your Manila folder.
Congratulations,
full of confidential documents." Yes. Yeah. Can you? Here's the thing. Here's what's really funny. Is right now there are any number of ex-senators, congressmen, congresspeople, really freaking out, White House personnel that are freaking the hell out right now. All of them knowing that they have confidential documents in their homes. Like, they all did.
Yeah.
They all did. Now the question, here's the appropriate question that doesn't get asked in these situations is, when they're asked to bring them back, what happens? You know what I mean? It's like when we asked you to return them, what did you do? That's the reason that places get raided and FBI
they just
gets
need to put out an all hands note and say,
listen,
for this 24-hour period,
like
you can
book, right?
you can bring them back and we won't say anything.
Exactly. But just open it up for this is so funny. We should have just a grace period, a 1-week grace period. We're going to close our eyes and we're going to walk out of the room, and here's a big box.
Just put them in the box.
In that box, and nobody will ask any questions.
By the way, that's a great idea.
I think that's the idea we should pitch.
Because everybody's got them. So
absolutely, everybody.
Yeah. Everybody's got them.
The question is, what do you do when you're asked for them back?
What do you do?
All right, let's get to our rants and raves section here as we get toward the end of our lovely little show here. And before we get into our rants and raves, of course, we have our wonderful website, thisoldmarketing.site, where you can check out everything. We love your story ideas. Come leave us voicemail. We love getting those voicemails on the site. There's 2 ways to do that on the site, so you can leave us a fun voicemail telling us how much you love us, or telling you, well, that's all you can do, is tell us how much you love us. Other than that, you can also subscribe to newsletters if you're there, if you like getting more of us in your inbox than you currently do, and that's available to you. And of course, I'm sure Joe will have all sorts of discounts to CEX available there and all those kinds of things. So links, and ideas from you, that's what you can find at thisoldmarketing.site, and we thank you for being a subscriber. Okay, so we have some rants and raves. I have just a very quick commentary, so I'm going to go first.
Please.
Because it's quick, and yours is way more interesting. So right now, the media layoff thing is just a fascinating thing, because, as I mentioned earlier, media layoffs, tech layoffs, they're all getting every other day. It seems like some new tech company is laying off some people, and I don't mean to deprecate this at all or sort of minimize it, because I've been laid off. I've been laid off twice in my life, once because of economic and once because just of this company was being stupid. And it sucks. I know it sucks. I've been there. Now I will tell you, both times I was laid off ended up being the best parts of my life, one of which was to join up with this guy, Joe Polizzi. So it can be a good thing ultimately, but I know it's not. I know it's hard and difficult. But what I wanted to comment on is that this running meme of the overhiring during the pandemic is kind of not true. It's just so there's. Do you ever listen to Ben Thompson, the Stratechery?
Only a couple times, not
podcast?
Recently. No.
It's wonderful, by the way. I couldn't recommend it more. But he actually went and did the analysis on hiring, how many people, like Amazon and Microsoft and Google and all these companies, and basically did the analysis on how many they've hired since 2016. In some cases, he went back to see the hiring spree and then how many people they've lost. And the narrative that all of a sudden we overhired during the pandemic and then had to correct that is, as he says in his post, it's just not true. He said it's very surprising, but it's not true. He said you can argue that they've been overhiring for 6 or 7 years, but you can't say that there was this big, with the exception of a little bit with Amazon that had a bit of a big bump in 2020 because of all the work from home and online delivery stuff. That there's a bit more of a bump there, but everybody else, it's just an upward trend. It's just been going up and up and up. The tech sector was just going up and up, and it was due. It was just due for a correction at some point. And of course, 2022 brought a huge correction to the tech space, more generally speaking. But that overhiring did not happen because of the pandemic. It just happened. And there's some fascinating, and we'll put a link in the show notes, of course, for those that want to go look at it. But I just find it fascinating because, to me, it always looks, when I see those layoffs, P&G, for example, they've famously and have been written up in business books on this, get rid of 10% of their workforce every year, right? They just lop off the bottom 10% every year. And there are companies that routinely do 10% cuts every single year just to refresh the employee pool. This is a good thing that happens in the business environment. And again, I don't want to minimize this for those who have gotten laid off or anything like that, but from an economy standpoint, this is ultimately these small layoffs that ultimately regenerate. And I have every anticipation that this year, the second half of this year, is going to see a hiring spree, especially in the tech space. But the meme that is going around right now that it was these tech companies that were overhiring during the pandemic is proven to be false. So just wanted to comment on that.
Even with all the layoffs, whether you believe them or not, still unemployment is at a historic low rate.
That's right. Yeah, this is focused in on the tech sector. but he looked at Facebook, he looked at Alphabet, he looked at Apple, he looked at Microsoft, and you look at the graphs and in this post that and unfortunately it may be behind a wall, so you may not be able to get to it, but it's worth subscribing to, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to his podcast. But if you just look at the numbers, he goes back to 2013 in some cases and just shows that it's been a steady upward growth since 2013. So 10 years of growth. Amazon started in 2013 with 109,000 employees. They finished 2022, 10 years later, with 1.5 million employees. I mean, that's 10x growth over 10 years. That's just astounding. But it didn't all happen in 2020. It happened, the big jump actually was between 2016 and 2017. So it's just the numbers, when you start to look at it like that, are just really interesting.
The most important thing that you said in that is you have to pan out. Look at the chart from a different perspective than just looking at it from a 12-month perspective. I say that with Bitcoin all the time. People say, "Oh, you lost all your, oh, I can't believe you invested." I said, just look at the chart. Look, I mean, it's you haven't seen many charts that look as good as a Bitcoin chart. You just have to look at it at a 5-year perspective. But anyways,
that's right.
Okay.
Go back and look at it. All right, what do you got?
So I've mentioned on the show that I've been doing a little LinkedIn experiments over the past 60 days. I've been posting regularly on LinkedIn. I haven't done that before, and I have some findings. I want to share those findings. First of all, just so people know, I post at least once per day on the weekdays, sometimes twice per day now, and I've been trying every other weekend, and that's just for time purposes. If I'm available on the weekend, I'll post. Weekend posts do actually a little bit better because of less competition, but so that's just one little data point. I've also found no differences between images and no images. So I've done some with images, some with no images, and it's about the same. It really is about the big idea that you're trying to share. Hashtags seem to help, but not so much you notice. Now, my two best posts, one was an image post and one was a story on being focused. So I haven't figured out the image yet, Robert, but I've got some other findings here. So follower count. I've added over the last 60 days, I've added less than 2,000 LinkedIn followers. Now, as you've mentioned on this show, I have over 200,000 followers. So as a percentage, very small. I'm doing a lot of work and I'm not getting a lot of followers. So you might think, I better not use followers as an indicator. Here are my ahas, though. I added a LinkedIn newsletter as an offering when I started this whole thing. So basically, I have my own newsletter, the random newsletter that I send out every other Thursday, and then I package that up, and now I send this on LinkedIn every Monday. I've added almost 25,000 subscribers in 60 days.
LinkedIn subscribers.
What's that? LinkedIn subscribers to the newsletter. I've added so
now. Quick insertion question: do you have the ability to export those? You don't have the ability to export those, right? So it's truly a rented audience.
I can see them. I'd have to manually
export their email addresses.
Yes,
right. Okay.
It is absolutely rented land at this point. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yep.
What's amazing is I haven't figured it out, but it seems like if you're in creator mode and they go into your profile, like your newsletter stands out pretty clearly. So to have a LinkedIn offering in your profile really makes a difference. So speaking of profile, when I started this process, I was getting about 20 profile looks a day. Right now I'm averaging over 1,000 profile looks a day, which is amazing.
How do you see that?
I have, if you go into your profile and scroll down, it will say, here's how many people looked at your profile in the last 7 days. And you click on it and you can do some analytics against it.
Oh, yeah. There we go. So how many? Yeah.
So right now I'm averaging over 1,000 a day on profile looks. So that's crazy. So now, last thing, commenting. Most important thing I've learned here, commenting on other people's posts is the most critical thing you can do. So I'm not just posting, I'm commenting on about 10 to 15 and probably like 5 or 10 per day, but on 10 to 15 different people that I consider influencers that I want to target. Now, it's more important, but not for reasons you think. When you comment on somebody else's post, your audience sees what you did in their LinkedIn stream. So
Sure.
while you might think you're going to pick up new followers by doing the commenting, you're really not. What you're doing is it's retention for your current audience because they're seeing that. So if you don't have a following, my recommendation would be to go heavy on the commenting. Target 10 to 20 accounts where your customers, prospects are hanging out, and that's what I would focus on. So I'm going to keep doing these updates, but that's just the first 60 days. Right now, I like what I see in some areas. In other areas, I'm a little disappointed. I still haven't had any big, like every post I do, Robert, I'll get 70 to 100 reactions, which is great. I'm not poo-pooing it by any means, but I haven't seen some that you see they get thousands of thousands. It seems like everyone gets about the same. But again, it's only been 60 days, so who knows?
So I'll give you some very quick comparisons, right? Did you say that there was a big spike after you did the newsletter on profile views on a daily average?
Since I've been doing this, I've been slowly ramping up profile. So the commenting and the posting, profile views are going up.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm just as just a data comparison point, I have 26,000 followers. So about 10%. 10% of what you have. I'm getting about 200 views. Anywhere between 118 on the lows. I mean, I don't know where you see the average, but you probably averaged it out, right?
I just averaged it out.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at it right now. So anywhere between a high of 209, and this is in the last 6 months, to lows of 75 during Christmas and all that kind of stuff. So it looks like it's about 180, 175 as an average.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I'm going back to when I started here. I mean, it was in the hundreds. Now, yeah. I mean, I had it's just. Anyways, we could talk about this all
I think
day.
it's the commenting and the posting. I wonder. My hypothesis, and it'll be fun to test this, is that I wonder if the newsletter is really helping the profile views, or if, like you say, it's more of a retention thing.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is that seems to be the call to action, that people go to the profile and then they say, oh, I like what Joe's doing, subscribe. At least there's something there. I don't think they would do that with anything that's not a LinkedIn newsletter. If I put my own newsletter there, I don't think I'd be seeing those kind of subscribers.
I think that's right. That's right.
But more to come. More to come.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And if there's any LinkedIn experts out there that want to educate us
please.
On this stuff, please do. We would love the advice. So what do you got? What do you got this week? What's going on?
Oh yeah, it's still heads down. We're in Creator Economy Expo mode. We've got that full agenda up. We've got the price break day. We got all kinds of good things coming. So that's what I'm doing. In 2 weeks I've got a little vacation I'm going to take, but right now heads down. How about you?
I am, as we speak, I am on the road in the lovely New York City, where I'm doing some year planning with the good folks at CMIs for Content Marketing World 2023, which should be a total blast, and some year upfront planning and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm back home and busy in client work, and my wife has been away on an amazing adventure, which I'll tell you a little bit more about on the show maybe next week. But she's just literally back yesterday from this amazing adventure that she took, swimming with whales.
Wow.
And it was unbelievable.
Crazy.
So I'm anxious to sit down with her and go out to dinner and hear all about it and all that kind of stuff, because we sort of were two ships that passed in the night as she arrived home.
Two ships that pass in the... I'm sorry, that's my Barry.
There you go. There you go. Well, we should just be done with
we're
that.
Done.
We'll see
Show's
you guys
over.
next week. Remember, everybody, it's your story to tell. Here's the tagline. It's your story to tell. Tell it well. We'll see you next week on This Old Marketing.